Hi, this is Carrie. I apologize for, well, I'm not late. I apologize for being right on time.
You should apologize for being right on time.
We had to take extra precautions today because another meeting got Zoom bombed. So we're just,
Yeah,
being
that's
careful.
great. Yeah, that's great. Thank you for doing that.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yes, that's great that you're taking the precautions. That's not great that anything was, yeah. Yes.
Okay, I think we can go ahead and get started.
Did someone let Aditi in?
He's right
Yep, I got him.
there. You go.
Thanks, Sean.
And Sophie Hanson is not able to attend tonight.
Right.
It looks like we're all here, so I'll call the meeting to order. For May 12th, Board of Health. And can we have a roll call? 80.
Adi Bengali present.
Carrie,
Hi, Carrie Janelle here.
Kevin,
Kevin Sexton here.
Joan,
Joan Wetzel here.
and Rick Lopez.
And
I do
Who's
hear.
that in the background?
Yeah, we got some feedback from somebody going on.
Sorry. Yep.
Oh. Okay. In terms of the agenda tonight, we have approval of the minutes from the April meeting. Public comment, although we'll see if there's any public comment.
I think John Burke is here for public comment.
For public, okay.
Yes.
And then I was going to make, since Chuck Tyrone and Brian Bowe are here from the Conservation Commission, I think we might move that discussion up to do first, and then we'll do the haulers regulation and the protocol for communication, and then wrap up with the usual reports. So that's the plan for tonight. In terms of the minutes for April 15th, everybody hopefully has had a chance to review them. Any comments, questions, edits?
No.
Look okay? Good. Okay, and vote, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes from April 15th. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second. Roll call, Carrie?
Sorry, I was muted. Yes.
Kevin? Kevin's muted as well. But we can lip read Kevin. He said yes. Joan
Yes.
and Rick, yes. Okay. In terms of public comment, I see a couple names I'm not familiar with: John Burke, Joseph Fleury. Why don't we start? Go ahead, Haley.
Start with John Burke. Does that work?
Yes, he
Okay.
logged on first.
Okay. I'll ask to unmute him.
thank you. My name is John Burke. I live at 8 Sanborn Street.
Yes.
And I appreciate the opportunity. The folks at your health department have been receptive to the fact that when I moved to town, I was told that there were some regulations in the town, rules in the town preventing dumpster emptying at hours like 4:45, 5:15 in the morning. And so I have repeatedly informed when this happens. The noise is like a gun goes off when
Mhm.
they dump those dumpsters. If you're not familiar with 8 Sanborn, it's the Postmark building. And so it's right in downtown. There are at least a dozen various dumpsters within earshot of us behind CVS, the various churches that are across the street. And so when they show up at 4:45 a.m. and back their truck in with the beep, 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 and then they dump it and it sounds like a cannon has gone off, it's not good for sleep. So it is unhealthful. And I think if there's something the town can do to regulate that, that's done during regular business hours. I know I live downtown during business hours. That's the way it goes. But, 4:45 a.m. doesn't seem reasonable for that to happen.
Great. Well, we hear you, Mr. Burke, and perfect timing because we will be discussing the HALA regulations, and we'll definitely take that into consideration.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
Thank you. Joseph Fleury, do you have a public comment or are you just tuning in to watch? Maybe we can unmute him.
I am part of the Conservation Commission, here to
Oh.
speak with Brian and Chuck later.
Okay,
Apologies.
great.
Thank you.
Welcome. All right.
Rick, can I just clarify real quick? I'm just trying to figure out where 8 Sanborn is, John. If somebody could unmute.
Yep.
Put John back on.
So Sanborn Street runs between Haven and Lowell.
Okay.
Are you familiar with the new post-1917 steakhouse?
Oh, correct. Yes. Yeah, the old
Okay.
post office. That's what you're referring to.
So 8 Sanborn is the condominiums that are behind post-1917. We're in the residential. There are 50 units residential.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you very much.
Yep.
Okay. So why don't we, as I mentioned, go on to agenda item 7 on the Conservation Commission's inquiry into the wildlife policy. And I don't know, a day, do you want to just...
I'll just defer to you. I'll defer to
Okay.
you. Thank you.
So in the pre-board packet, I think everybody got the email that Brian Bowe had sent asking a couple questions as to how the wildlife policy affects or impacts, or how the for conservation in town lands, how it relates to that. And he had a couple specific questions. One was around, are they required for town managed lands to, have signs up? Are there any specific requirements for those town-owned lands? And then secondly, if, as I understand it, if there were approved wildlife feeding efforts to preserve certain types of wildlife on town lands, would that be acceptable under the current policy? And so maybe I could just ask Brian to speak to those two questions, so we're really clear on what you're asking for. We did ask town council to comment, but we can talk about that later. So Brian, welcome.
Hello, thank you. You can't see me because for some reason not letting me turn my camera on, but anyway, thanks for having us here tonight. Adai, thank you for passing my note on to the board members. As was just mentioned, we did have some questions looking for clarifications, and we did read the response from town council, which was helpful. I don't want to get into a lengthy statement of any kind above and beyond the letter that you're seeing in front of you. But for the most part, we want to make sure that we are in sync with the goals of the board, while at the same time being able to achieve the goals of the Conservation Commission. So For example, we have a multi-year restoration project going on at Bear Meadow. We've done some tree culling, some thinning, some grasses cutting, and we are intending to bring back bird stock, for example, to promote further growth. One of the thoughts is that is likely we would have bird feeders sometime in the future, although the type of bird feeder, the type of seed isn't known yet. So our thought is, our concern is that somehow that process would be deemed a public nuisance. And so it would be helpful if we get clarification on what is meant by public nuisance. I mean, I've looked it up online. I know the words that is said are online, but as we know, the internet can lie. So I'd like to understand from your perspective how you will be judging a complaint if it comes in, what deems a public nuisance in a conservation area, which is by definition all about habitat and wildlife. I'll give it back to you guys for a moment.
Sure. So, I mean, I guess I can start and see if other board members have other, well, actually, I can turn it over to Kevin. That's fine, and start the conversation.
Yeah, I think, Brian, it's pretty simple. Well, actually, sorry, let me backtrack. It's not simple. But the definition of it is fairly self-evident, where public nuisance is in the effect that you are affecting your neighbor in a way by feeding of wildlife that they are put out by this feeding, right? So the reason why bird feeders are excluded is because, you know, it's fine to have your bird feeder. If your bird feeder, however, is being knocked over by squirrels, for example, and then that feed is now on the ground, and those fowl are then feeding off of that and creating a nuisance for your neighbor. That's kind of the gray area that we're talking about. But make no mistake about it, it is a gray area. It is subject to this board's opinion as to you creating a public nuisance.
Okay, thank you. So as I said, I've looked it up online and everything, and in there, one of the words that jumps out to me is an unreasonable expectation. And again, conservation land by definition is habitat and wildlife. So can you think of a scenario where it would be unreasonable to have birds being fed? How could that constitute a public nuisance?
If it carries onto somebody else's property.
I see.
I think one of the, actually, we can close the screen there so
May
that.
may I join in the conversation? I'm sorry, I have my hand up, but
There we
I
go.
just, I mean, there's a legal definition of nuisance that we're bound by as the Board of Health to investigate issues, and it's about whether they pose harm to, sorry, I'm just, it's something that may be harmful to inhabitants, injurious to the estates, dangerous to the public health, or may be attended by injurious odors. And so that's the starting point. And then, as Kevin says, we have a duty, and that duty is delegated to our agent to investigate and determine if it is a nuisance. You know, this isn't a arbitrary definition. There's a Massachusetts general law definition that applies across all the communities in the Commonwealth. And I just want to make sure that's extra clear, because sometimes people aren't clear on that. So, and again, I mean, as Kevin is saying, you know, a bird feeder by itself would not constitute a nuisance. There need to be additional conditions that would impact the neighbors, potentially impact the public health, and so forth, as determined by the agent of the Board of Health. And that then would constitute a nuisance and be under our jurisdiction.
Okay, so perhaps I'll come back to that, but the moment, can you explain a bit what the process would be? From what I can read, there's a complaint that is submitted, and then you folks decide based on that complaint. Is there any review process? Does any one of your enforcement people or one of you go out to the site, wherever it is, to make a judgment, to do your own determination?
Dave, do you want to respond?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
you.
Yes, we do. When we get a complaint, we go out, investigate the complaint, and then we determine if there is a violation or not.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you. I don't want to monopolize the time, so if Chuck or Joe want to chime in, feel free to do so. So from my perspective, as I said before, we do want to stay on the right side of this. And so I would like to feel comfortable that if there was a complaint that was registered, that we would be notified and we could meet somebody out there when you're doing the review you were talking about, Odai, so we could see what the situation looked like through somebody else's eyes, and to have a conversation on the spot about why it is or isn't a nuisance and what can or can't be done to ameliorate it somewhat. So I guess what I'm looking for is some assurances that this would be a back and forth kind of process, at least in the beginning, especially in the beginning, until the rules of the road get more smoothed out. I know that wasn't a question. I guess I'm asking if that made sense.
Go ahead, Carrie.
Well, I mean, I think, sorry, I'm a little, our agent, certainly our agent can, go out to a site and investigate. They would investigate the complaint, and, they have the authority under the regulation to, determine whether it is a nuisance, and then if, the regulation says, there would be a fine. So while we absolutely want, to, as you say, have good relations, I also would be concerned about us saying that, we give some sort of assurance that, our staff would be engaging in dialogue with people before issuing, fines, because that's not what's in our regulations. So that's why I'm kind of stuttering a little. I'm trying to figure out how we do this, without having people feel like we're giving preferential treatment or in some way, second guessing our agent and their authority.
I understand. And I'm sort of in probably the same as you, but so by assurances, what I'm looking for is some kind of informal back and forth process. For example, if you're going to have an agent or somebody go out and check it out, if we're notified and we can meet that person out at the spot, then I think that could help cut through the issue in most, if not all, the cases. And that's what I'd like to do. I'd like to have it be that we could go ahead and do our restoration without affecting abutting neighbors or even people visiting the conservation lands, and not have it rise to being a point of contention with the board, certainly not to the point of there being a fine being issued.
Brian, can I chime in on that too? This is Joseph Fleury, 20 Willow Street, Associate Member of Conservation Commission. Just to kind of extend on that point, Conservation Commission's responsible for over 1,000 acres of property. We've also had our budget cut 20%, and we depend on a lot of volunteer work and efforts to fund kind of maintaining our properties here in Reading. And so, one of those attractants that we typically see on conservation land, not necessarily from an abutter or a neighbor, is the use of wildflowers and pollinators, pollinator gardens, etc. that will naturally attract wildlife. People do go onto conservation land, whether it's a trail, whether it's a park or a bench, and occasionally you may see feeding happening. Those situations definitely can be addressed, but it is on conservation land. And the way I'm reading and interpreting this policy is that the fine would be issued to the managing authority of that property. So would a fine be issued on the town of Reading or the Conservation Commission if a resident or a visitor to a conservation area was seen feeding multiple occasions or a single occasion to warrant an investigation, whether, feeding is happening on this property or not? We're not in a position to pay fines for behavior, but we can encourage practices that align with the Board of Health's policy here for feeding wildlife, as well as our conservation and recreation policies that we post on any of our properties. But these are the situations where I think, and just to elaborate on Brian's point, we would rather have a member of conservation meet the Board of Health on conservation land, not on a neighbor's property or resident's property.
And
Yeah, I'm gonna, Kevin.
I know you want to say something, Carrie. Let me go first. I have
yeah, sorry, I couldn't see you.
That's all right. I have a couple questions here. So for Brian and Joe, and for Day. Firstly, I know we touched on this in our last meeting. Is our first point of contact a informational one, or I believe we can fine on the first point of contact? Is that correct, Day? Or anybody?
Required to. That's what our regulation says, because that was what our discussion was last month, that there's no leeway for we could, the permit, the regulation says first offense is a finable offense. And I'm sorry.
I got one more. Hold on.
I know.
Let me get through this. So I realize that, and I understand that's our regulation. I think that's something we should take up at a future meeting to discuss. I know we've discussed it ad nauseum already, but here we are, a few months into this regulation, and we are having these discussions again. So I just think it's worth to bring it up, not for a vote, but just to discuss and see if we may want to vote at a future meeting about it. Neither here nor there. So it sounds like what we're hearing, though, doesn't rise to the level, because I mean, the town forest and conservation land, typically, I know it abuts private residences, but it is not something that I would qualify that you'd run into from a nuisance standpoint, right? So one part of the regulation is that if this becomes a nuisance to somebody other than yourself, that's where our fines really start. Am I misreading that, Day, or anybody on the board?
I think that's true. And so if there was some inadvertent feeding of wildlife in the center of a large reservation that wasn't impacting anybody, that's probably that's not a problem. If that same activity was happening right at the border to some adjacent homes, and that activity was drawing, other animals, raccoons and rats,
Sure.
to that area, and there was adjacent, residences. Yes, then there is some judgment about whether it's causing I think a public nuisance. Go ahead, Carrie, and then I want to.
Carrie, I'm going to let you go in a second. This is my last point.
Oh, okay.
Which brings me back to my first point, which is I feel like we really should revisit how we handle the first offense of this regulation, because of things of this nature where it's like, okay, well, I mean, Is it a violation? Technically, yes, because we made it so, but it's in the middle of the town forest and it didn't impact anybody. Right. So
So
I just think we should have this as a future conversation. All right, Karen, now go ahead and kill me.
Sorry. No. And please, no, that's not what this is. No, I mean, I think, I think there's a couple things. What I wanted to just reiterate, I do not see how we can possibly agree to any kinds of assurances that here's how we're going to do our regulation for you folks. That's just, I mean, it would be like, it would
Can I
be
answer
like
that like
saying,
real
we're
quickly
gonna,
and then I'll shut up?
can I finish?
Yes.
It would be like saying to one particular restaurant, okay, we're going to enforce the food code this way for you, but we're not going to do it the same way with everyone else.
I'm not suggesting that.
No, but this is what I'm saying is that giving any informal assurances really puts our agent and our authority at risk because we are not holding true to the
Correct.
The law and the regulation. That's my
agreement with
concern.
that.
And I have one more, but go ahead.
Like I said, you and I are in agreement with that. My whole position has been, when we started this process, I thought our first point of contact was going to be giving the actual regulation to the person that the complaint has been lodged against. And that is like the first point of contact. Like, hey, this is who we are. When I come back here next time, I'm going to be fining you, just so you know. And I feel like we've jumped that point where where we've given authority to just fine right out of the gate. And I don't agree with that point. I didn't, and this is my fault. I personally didn't realize that that's how we set it up as we were going through this regulation. And I think it should be something that we revisit to the point where it's like, hey, just so you know, this is the way we do things in town now. We're putting you on notice. Here is the actual regulation, verbatim. Here you go. You can read it all you want. Just know next time I come back out here from a complaint standpoint, this is serving as your notice and we're going to be fining you. That I don't disagree with the fine part of it. I disagree with the methodology to get to it. That's all.
Yes, a question that I would like to ask is, does this regulation prevent us from issuing a warning?
It says first offense is,
It does.
I mean, this was our whole conversation last month, right? And it says first offense is, and there's no provision for issuing a warning. And I understand what you're saying, Kevin, and I would be interested in perhaps amending our regulation to, make it clear that we would, and here's the procedure for a warning.
I think it's fair just for us to discuss. We don't have to even put it for a vote.
Exactly.
I would discuss in a future meeting,
Yes,
how we want to do it.
I would be open to that.
I would say that the health department already has the authority to give a warning. This, if you read the regulation, it says, the Board of Health can assess fines for violations, and it gives the dollar amount. It doesn't say it can't give a warning. We give warnings all the time. Dumpsters overflow. We give a warning. We go back the next day. If they're not cleaned up, we give a violation. We do that all the time. So I'm not sure we have to have it in black and white. And I would say the second thing is the regulation it says that an exception is for state-related activities, and maybe we should amend it to include town-related activities so that it's not just the Commonwealth. It's also if the town of Reading has a specific program it's trying to do with wildlife, that would be an acceptable exception, because currently, if it isn't done by the Commonwealth, then it's not. And
Great
then
point, Rick.
I think, and then thirdly, one of Brian's question was, are they required to put up signs? And I think that's the kind of thing where if there's a complaint, or if they see evidence that a bird feeder is dropping seeds and other animals are, then they need to act on it, whether or not they got a warning or not, whether or not we know about it or not. But I don't think we're in the business of, saying you have to have signage here or there. It's following the regulation. So I think that, I think the idea of a warning would address Brian's concern that if there was a complaint and the inspector saw it and within a day or two it was rectified, I think that would be acceptable. I'm gonna Carrie, I'm gonna Chuck and Joseph had their hands up for a while. So why don't we go with Chuck? Do you have a comment?
Most of my comments were addressed by the Board of Health, and I appreciate the discussion about the warning. And I was just going to say that, the Conservation Commission is also in the fining. I don't know, we're part of fining, and we do that a lot. I found it much easier to walk around town and to talk to people and to understand their point of view. And it helps me deliver the message of education to what the Conservation Commission wants to do. And I use that first interaction to make sure that they understand what'll happen if I have to come out again. I think there's a lot of confusion. If you sent me a fine because I put up a bird feeder in the middle of Bear Meadow, which is only 4 acres, so it's not very far away from any spot, any houses, I would not understand why, because my perspective is from a conservation standpoint, and I'm wondering if the health department goes out there and doesn't look at what we know. So this opportunity to have a discussion and to educate each other about what's going on seems to me like a good opportunity and a nice buffer between some action that can't be taken away. As I understand it, when you issue a fine, it has to be, it can't be taken back. And I think the only other thing that I wanted to say is that we talk about Bear Meadow. We've tried to ban dogs up there. That ban's in effect. We have it's been about 2 years. We haven't fined one person at this point. We could, and sometimes I feel like we should. And of course, sometimes I feel like I should chase them down the street and follow them to their house and just, stamp and pound my chest. But the whole idea is I understand that when you make changes, it takes a while to get them into the fabric of this community, which has been here for a very long time. We have people that have been walking through Bear Meadow forever, and you probably have people that have been feeding birds forever, and they just don't understand what's going on. So I think I'll leave it at that, but I would appreciate if a day ever came over to me and said, hey, look, we got a complaint about Millette Soms in Morgan. Someone's sitting on a bench and eating his lunch, and what he doesn't eat, he feeds to whatever's out there, pigeons or whatever. And that's going to be a problem if it doesn't stop, and you need to put up a sign or something like that. So I did notice in the correspondence with Ivrea that signs are recommended where we think they're needed and where people may have lunch. And so again, we'd like to educate those people first before we had to spend. I mean, the last time I bought a sign that was going to work for Bear Meadow, I think it was about $120. And so, and again, no one wants signs all over the place either. So we really want to make sure that they're needed. So that's all I have to say. Appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Fleury, you had your hand up earlier. Are you all set now, or do you want to make a comment?
Yeah, no, I just wanted to follow back up. And I appreciate all this conversation. And I think this dialogue would have been helpful last year while you guys were shaping the policy. So that's kind of why we wanted to ask clarifying questions as part of conservation. I would actually have to echo what Chuck had said. And I hope that Aday and Chuck are having conversations at the town level together if an issue does arise on conservation land. The thing that I'm still trying to wrap my head around is if a fine is issued on conservation land, is it to the individual that it was feeding, or is it to the owner of the property, which is effectively the town of Reading or the Conservation Commission who manages the 1,000 acres? That clarification, I think, is where having Aday and Chuck in town hall about 10 feet away from each other talking would be beneficial. Especially when these kind of policy conversations come up. We have public outreach events that we talk on Conservation Commission. This is something we can definitely talk about. We have a lot of birders that have expressed questions about this policy. So for us to talk on behalf of the policy as well as the Board of Health and Conservation, how it relates to us, that's why we can't kind of came to you tonight. So thank you again for your time.
Thank you. Yes, Carrie.
Thank you. And this was the second piece I wanted to say, but I gave Kevin back a little time and I lost my window. But
Sorry.
we share. No, we share. But just I say that only because of what I wanted to say is I'm not sure people are clear. The act of feeding a bird or sitting on a bench and eating your lunch does not in and of itself constitute a violation. And it does not, it's what happens is if there's a complaint, then our agent is instructed to go out and assess the circumstance and determine whether it is a nuisance or not. So I think I think some of the circumstances that folks are concerning themselves with are not actually scenarios where there would be a reason for a fine, right? If you're talking about something in the middle of nowhere, then I don't know how it fits within the definition of nuisance. I would want to hear from my agent before I would say that it did. I don't see that in any way. I think somebody sitting on a bench and feeding, just dropping their bread once a day, right? That in and of itself wouldn't, so yes, if there was a complaint, our agent would go out, they would investigate, they would identify, and they may say, no, this doesn't meet the threshold of nuisance as we understand the law. And I think that in those instances, absolutely, there would be an opportunity for a town employee to be discussing it with another town employee. But I think this is a really important education piece and an understanding of what we're doing here, right? We're not talking about just feeding the birds. We're talking about feeding the birds to a degree that it constitutes a nuisance that endangers public health or land and public safety. So, and then if I can I just want to say too, and the point, I hear your point, Rick, about the issuance of warnings, but I think maybe this is where we're not consistent. My understanding is that our regulations say the agent may issue a warning, or there may, and we don't have that in this regulation. And that's where we're kind of creating a little confusion for ourselves and, amongst ourselves. That's my observation.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I was just wondering if I could just create a situation where Aday would need to talk to me. So if your agent or staff, I'm not saying it's always Aday that goes out there, I don't know how things work, went out into a field and did notice that the bird feeders, and there was a lot of other activity around a bird feeder, and he determined that somehow violated this regulation because of whatever. But if he had the opportunity to talk to the conservation agent, he could find out that we're doing a bird study. What we're doing at Bear Meadow is we're trying to create new habitat. That's why we've banned dogs. We're trying to bring in the American woodcock. And every year for Mass Audubon, we want to count them. We want to find out if we have 2 nesting pairs. We want to have 4 nesting pairs. And how do you do that? Well, it's almost like, how do you do a turtle count? You have to actually string a line of fence up in the woods, and people don't know what that is. And when they see that, maybe that's a nuisance to people. But this line of fence is going to allow us to count turtles because, that's why it's happening. There's no reason not to have an opportunity to find out what's going on unless you only want to find people. And I don't think that's the way the town of Reading wants its town offices to work. So
Absolutely.
Can I just comment? Because I think Carrie, as I read this, I'm reading the regulation here. I think there is an opportunity for warning written into the regulation. Under the exceptions, 26.4, exceptions to violation. Paragraph F says, the feeding of pets, provided if the food's intended for pets, the landowner or person responsible for the premises will be required to take steps to render such food inaccessible to wildlife, including the requirement, because it is talking about pets, that the food be removed if any wildlife gains access to food. Conditions that we talked about, this 48 hours, the conditions allowing access be corrected and the food removed within 48 hours. So that suggests to me this 48 hours, doesn't that suggest that that there was an interaction with the inspector and then 48 hours an expected correction of the problem?
Yeah, I'm not sure. And I think like Kevin, I think it would be good to revisit, put the
Yeah.
regulation on the
Okay.
agenda and revisit it another time.
Yeah.
Because I don't know that I'm just confused. But I wanna shoot. I wanna address something that I heard in the comments about someone might decide it's a nuisance to them. That's not what this law is about. This regulation is about. This regulation is about a very specific definition of nuisance created in the Mass General laws and enforced by our agent. So it's not I think, there's a broad use of the term. Oh, this is a nuisance. This is a pain in the neck. That's not what a day is going to be engaged in, or any other member of the staff, right? We're responsible for identifying very specifically, does this meet the standard of nuisance as described in chapter 111, I forget what, but section 143, I think. So I hope that can allay some concerns among folks as y'all are considering these things. And I hope that we can take up the discussion of this regulation at another meeting and see if we can get some, maybe we need to add a couple more definitions and maybe, make a clear carve out of what we're talking about with warnings and the like, because sure, we want to be able to afford our staff some opportunity, but we also cannot say we're going to give informal assurances that anybody, if a day was giving informal assurances to any one individual, that would be a matter of concern about a sort of a special way of applying the rule, and if we can apply it or not apply it to others. We can't do that. We want to be helpful and want to collaborate, but we do have to be careful about that.
Kevin?
This is an interesting conversation,
Yeah.
to say the least, and I appreciate you all for coming out and having it. Joe, don't think I didn't notice how you dropped the dime on we did not collaborate with you guys. That is absolutely the case. We didn't. You're right. I saw that. I noticed how you did that. Good job. And you're right. Like, so I think this being a new regulation, we worked through it with the intent, just so you know, we worked through it with the intent from a resident perspective. A resident brought this to us and said, hey, this is a massive issue going on with us. It happens all the time. And we said, actually, we don't have any way to enforce a fix for that issue. So you're right, 100%. We hear it, we get it. And I think when we have the conversation next, we should invite more stakeholders to that meeting so that we can have a big, broad discussion, because at the end of the day, different perspectives create good policy, right? That's what we're looking to do. So the one thing I will say, a day has no want to go out and find anybody. He is not looking to do that kind of level of, like, this is complaint oriented stuff that he has to now go look at, that we as a board have forced him to go look at. It is definitely not a want-based thing. So I just want to make sure that I say both of those things out loud, but I definitely hear you. And I think we should definitely put this on as a future agenda item, and we should invite as many stakeholders as we can to that meeting. It's not, obviously it's rolled out as not a perfect thing, but that's okay. We can change it. We can make it as close to perfect as we possibly can.
Brian?
Yeah. So it seems like this conversation is wrapping up, and we've taken a lot of your time, and I appreciate the time. Even more so, I appreciate the open-mindedness of the conversation. I do think it would be great if you could revisit some of these issues that were talked about tonight. And one last thing, as a person who spent my career in tech, I never buy 1.0 of anything. So things are made to be written and then adjusted. And so if that's what you guys do, that's a great way. That's a great path people follow. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. And thank you for coming. And there'll be more discussion for sure at our next meeting.
Okay.
Yep.
Emily, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Joseph.
Yeah.
All right. And Chuck.
And Chuck. Thanks, y'all. That was a good
Okay,
conversation. It was very
yeah.
interesting.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
we-
some
we
perspectives I
definitely-
hadn't at least considered.
Yeah.
What
This is why this board works so well, just so you know.
Mm-hmm.
who, on your point, Kevin, if we had a discussion about this policy, who besides the conservation people, would be people we should invite? I'm not sure, because it is focused a lot on residents per se. I mean, the Conservation Commission's a focal thing. I'm not sure who else we could really.
But we do have, don't we have a forest committee? That's not the right name. It's
Town Forest
right
Committee.
now.
Town
Trails.
Forest, Town Forest Committee.
Town Forest Committee.
And that's not under the Conservation Commission. That's not part.
That's separate.
Separate.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I mean, I would say, anybody that I mean, you could argue DPW, right? So like public parks, so yeah. I think
So it might be the kind of thing that
any public land that is not, any public land, anybody that oversees public land, whether it's a committee or a division of the town, would probably be the right people to invite. And some people might not come. That's fine. But people interested certainly will. So
maybe
do we want to like adopt a policy to have a hearing for each and every regulation?
that's a conversation for.
Yeah, that's a bigger conversation.
That's a big conversation. We
I'm
should
not
have,
sure.
but we should
but
have
I want to just wrap up this one piece. So maybe a day, what you can do is prior to the next meeting, or would be to email a copy of the regulation to the people that Kevin mentioned and others, the town forests, certainly the Conservation Commission, maybe DPW, anybody who you think may be interested, and just say, we're going to have a conversation about this. If there are parts of this policy you are concerned about with respect to your area of responsibility, you may want to attend, and just kind of leave it up to them.
Sounds like a good idea.
Mm.
And we have all those regulations coming up.
Yep.
Would you like to postpone that to the next meeting and give us some time to, inform all the stakeholders and see if they can be at that meeting? Because
For the hauler policy?
correct, the DPW director would like to attend one of these meetings regarding these regulations. He stated that he would like to attend the June 11th meeting just to talk about it. So if you want to defer this conversation, this discussion to the next meeting, we can do that tonight as well.
Okay.
Okay, sorry, I missed that. What are we deferring a day? Sorry, I missed that.
The hauler regulations that's on the agenda for tonight.
Oh, right. Okay.
It's just it's a draft, and it's there for,
I was actually going to bring this up to you. I have yet to really look into that regulation in its entirety. So I was actually going to bring that up tonight to say, this is probably something that, well, if we want to talk about it, great, but I don't think it's worthy of a vote tonight.
Yeah,
certainly.
Yeah.
Agree.
And I would rather, if we're going to do something around, sorry, Rick, if we're going to do something in regards to discussing the wildlife feeding regulation, let's try not to have it be done in July or August. It's just so we can get as many people that may want to attend as possible. Like just thinking from a structural standpoint.
Okay. I think we can defer we've been deferring it. As a matter of fact, just a minor point, the draft that we got in our pre-board packet says section 26. In fact, the wildlife, we've been talking about this for a year, and the wildlife stuff got fast-tracked, and it's section 26. So this would be section 27.
We just
public
skipped right
health.
over that. Okay.
So I suppose we've been
I wondered about
involved for a
that.
while. And we can certainly defer it. It will make for a long meeting because are people okay with that? Is that
Perfectly fine.
That's great. Why don't we do that?
Well, especially if the DPW director has expressed interest in attending.
Right. Actually, two birds with one stone.
Yeah,
Maybe
that's right.
they're wildlife and a hauler for them.
Yeah.
So we're going to defer that. Why don't we go on then to agenda item number 6, the protocol for communicating new or amended regulations. And, I think it occurred to all of us in recent meetings that we didn't have a consistent way to really communicate regulations that we've adopted. And so I took the liberty of putting together this grid. Maybe Haley, can you share the document?
Sorry, just give me 1 second.
And forgive me, I've had a lot going on in my personal life lately. Did we approve the minutes from the last meeting?
Earlier, yeah, we did.
Yeah, we did.
Okay.
We did in this meeting.
You
Okay.
were muted and you were like yelling at I don't know what
Okay.
you were.
Yep. Sorry.
But yes, no, you're fine.
It's one of those weeks. Sorry, folks.
We all have them, Kevin.
Exactly.
We understand.
No
And just for
problem.
the record, I did review them and I agree with them. So hopefully I voted that way.
You voted yes. You voted
Okay,
good.
yes.
Yes, we said we could read your lips.
Yes.
Okay, good.
So this protocol, and I know the agenda came out as a vote. I mean, I guess we could take a vote. I was actually thinking of this more as an understanding of what we expect, as opposed to some legal document that we
Mhm.
need to take a vote on. But basically, it occurred to me that we passed two types of regulations. One are regulations that just really impacts residents, all 25,000 in some way, shape, or form. And then others that are very specific to certain businesses, particularly if there's a permit issued. And so it's a small subset of businesses or individuals or what have you. And so how you communicate might be considered different. And so just to quickly run down this, starting at the top, for regulations that impact really all residents, we are required by law to post them within 30 days in a local newspaper. And so that has to be on here. I think we would want to post it on our website, on the town website, and certainly, the health department website. We could consider a press release, and I talked to a reporter about the wildlife regulation a week or two ago, and she suggested a press release as a way to get the word out. And then we are required to forward a copy to the state. So, in these first few items, except for the press release, they're required. And then the next couple really is to, besides posting it to websites, to really do some kind of education, whether it's in the town manager minutes or, the town has I think a Facebook site. And this is less urgent. So I said 60 to 90 days for these, but really to have an expectation that there would be some everyday language explaining a regulation that impacts the entire population. And so this would be essentially a communication strategy. For regulations that impact a subset of businesses or individuals, it's very similar, the same type of thing. I think the only real difference is that the last item is that here we would have a group of individuals who presumably have permits, whether they're food establishments or they have a septic sewer arrangement, or they have a dumpster. And in those cases, we actually know who those people are because they've required permits, and we can communicate to them directly, explaining the updated or new regulations. We did this, I think, fairly effectively with the nicotine-free generation policy that we passed almost 2 years ago, next month, and went out to and made sure that all the tobacco and nicotine retailers in the town knew about the change that was going to come. And so that was kind of the model I was thinking about. So any comments, additions, subtractions, thoughts? Kerry, I'm surprised.
Kevin's hand came up just at the same time. It's not just me.
No, it's not just you, Carrie. I'm in the same boat. And I bet you're going to ask questions that I was going to ask. So please go right ahead.
All right. I have first, thank you, Rick, for doing this. It's great. And I'm a huge fan of checklists and kind of capturing things like this. And I thank you for taking this on. It's awesome. I have two comments and two questions. My first comment is it just as we think about making it really clear how we're using it, I would say add in the title for communicating newly adopted or amended. Just to make it really clear, because somebody could read this and say, wait, communicating new, is this it splitting hairs? But just making it clear, this is for, the trigger is the board has adopted or amended a regulation, and when that happens, these are the steps that would occur. The second one is maybe adding in on action, in the action column, just adding in, noting which ones are required by Mass General Law and the requirement, because it's kind of a yes, we're following the steps. Just tiny things to polish it a little. I'll say one of my old bosses used to say, these are the things that we do so that if you get hit by a bus, I know what to do. And it would then always be please, could we have another thing besides hit by a bus? I get your point, but anyways, but it was funny. And then I just had two questions, and it was, do we think any of the steps are like dependent upon each other? It's usually think in terms of dependencies, like we wouldn't post it to the website until we submitted it to the state, or we wouldn't post it in the local newspaper until we'd made sure that it was posted on the website, and just kind of noting that. And then the last one is there do we need to, like, do we need to add a step of we verify that everything happened, or that we've got a record that everything happened? Or do we just sort of trust that it's I guess, is it a recipe, or is it also a kind of compliance tool? Recipe just says do this, and maybe it comes out that way. A compliance tool has,
in terms of
information.
in terms of sequence, whether you have to do one thing before the other, I think the idea of the time frame is really more of a deadline as opposed to a sequence. So when it says within 90 days, it could be done within 30 days. I don't think, right? So
Right.
I don't
Absolutely.
think there's any problem with that. I think in terms of required by Massachusetts law, we could asterisk those and have a footnote down the bottom. And you had one other very good point. Oh, in terms of tracking this.
I mean, I'll just say one way I might do it would be I'd add a column, and it's a checklist then, and it's just either a date of when it happened, or a date that it was verified, or that's one way to do it. I don't, I
think it would
admit
have to
suggestions,
be
but I
done in
think
the minutes.
It could be, we could put another column, and it could be that it just comes out with the pre-board packet. Like if we passed an amendment or new regulation in the meeting at the pre-board packet of the next meeting, and maybe the second one and third, depending on when things were done, it would just get appended. It's not something we need to necessarily discuss or anything, but we could be aware as a board that those things were done. And then when they've all been done, it no longer appears in the board packet. I don't think we need to even bring it up at a meeting necessarily, unless there was some concern.
Unless there was a gap.
But I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. Just a thought. And I don't want to, I don't want to get us too much into sort of dictating staff activity, but I think, these kinds of tools, are, they're hopefully helpful for staff as well as for us in terms of we know kind of what the expectations are
Yeah.
and you have a way to communicate to us, or if somebody says, no, that didn't happen, there's a check, there's a thing that no,
Right.
here it is.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not opposed to it. I think it's a good tool. But last year was hectic.
Well,
We
right.
had the MBTA issue,
Right.
Mhm,
and that
mhm,
really consumed our time.
mhm,
It was back and
mhm.
forth, back and forth. There was no clear decision on, what we were doing. I was getting emails from, multiple individuals. I had to respond. It was just too many things happening at once. We were short
Plus, yeah,
staffed,
turnover of staff.
trying to, yeah,
Yep.
all these things. So
Sure.
yeah, last year was a little bit different.
Absolutely. So, when there's a highly intense issue, or when there's staff turnover, or, I mean, that's absolutely, we understand that. But I think, so yeah, I think it's how can you communicate easily with us obviously you do the things that are required by law within the time that's required, as and maybe the other things don't get done as quickly and whatever. Yes, I think we're all kind of saying the same thing. I love that you did this, Rick, and I know Kevin had his hand up, and he
Yep.
hasn't said a word.
I'm patiently waiting.
Go, Kevin. This is your chance.
All right. So, I see this thing, and first of all, you all know by now how my brain works. So I go right to the structural nature of it. What was the reasoning behind it is the first question I would have, and then that answer will depend on a billion other questions I may have.
I think the rationale was it occurred to some of us, and certainly to me, that we've passed regulations, and we really, as a board, in our oversight responsibilities, we feel our job is done. We voted on the regulation,
Sure.
Right.
Sure.
and it gets posted, and that's it. And there's a lot more that we could do, to make sure that people understand what's going on and so forth. And so that was the rationale. It was
Rick,
really
you just cut down like 1,000 questions right there with that answer. Just so you know. No, okay, that's good. The only reason I really ask, in all seriousness, is because I see something like this and I'm like, okay, there clearly is a need. I want to know what the need behind that is. I understand. I get the need. I see it. I just want to know where it came from. My first response, to be truthful, when I saw this, was, okay, this is about talking about what we do post making a regulation, but not pre.
Mhm.
And I feel like where we miss sometimes is making sure, and we just had this conversation literally a couple minutes ago with Joe and Brian and Chuck, where we miss the pre-conversation going on with public stakeholders and what have you. So while I love this, I think it's great. I think it is good for staff because they have a clear definition here. I agree with the day that, hey, there needs to be some kind of, and I don't know how you would word this, but some kind of ability to understand that staff might be stressed out and can't meet these timelines necessarily. That these are more guidelines than hard deadlines. I think that would be something, but I also think we need to be able to, we should have something that is even just policy wise. How are we going to handle having discussions about new regulations? Who are the stakeholders? Making sure that we're involving them. We're all imperfect, so we're not going to get everybody involved. We're but doing our best to make sure that we do bring in the people that are going to be affected by this in some even small measure. I mean, we saw it tonight. It's a small measure. There's at no point are we going to find CONSCOM for feeding
Right.
wildlife that they had no
Right.
control over somebody doing on their property, right? So
Right.
I think
Right.
there's a degree there that I would love to see also brought up, and it's probably a broader discussion than what you have here tonight. I'm fine with voting on this here tonight, but I'm just saying, you know, I think we should have a broader discussion about how we as a board handle our day-to-day business with the people that it affects the most. And I think,
Yeah, no, I agree.
from my being on the board, you know, I think this board is great in that regard and wanting to do that. I know previous boards have been horrible in doing that. And so, you know, all of our boards, we've always talked about them as silos to a degree, where they're out on their own, they're working on their own thing. And I think in general, most people try to not do that are on our different in various boards that we have in town. And I think it's an important thing to keep in mind that we you know, we are an independent board. At the end of the day, we have definitive say so, and that's great. But we should also listen to all parties involved before we get to that point. And so I think this is a great thing to have, Rick. I'm glad that you put it together. I just like to expound on it a little bit and make sure that we talk about, before we get to this, before we get to the regulation part, who we bring in and who
The
we
pre-reg, yeah, what's our pre-reg process? I agree heartily, Kevin. Yeah.
And we actually have started that with
Yep.
the hauler regulation, saying we don't
Yep.
have all the people at the table that we need to have.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This
I
is
think
one of the more productive meetings we've had in a while. And I'm not saying we don't have
No, we have
meetings,
good meetings.
but this was
yeah,
a very productive meeting tonight. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, I think this is terrific. And I think, you know, it helps us, it helps the board, the staff, you know, it makes, you know, gives us some guardrails for ourselves and, you know, to hold ourselves accountable and step back and sort of say, yeah, how do we make sure that we're doing our best without turning ourselves into pretzels to engage folks that,
And
you
we'll
know,
save
have an
ourselves
interest.
time as well too, because
That's right.
people have ideas that we didn't think of, and it's like, oh,
That's right.
well, that changes the way I think of this thing now, and you know, that's
That's
just
right.
So
discussion's always a good thing.
would
That's
you like to adopt a policy to have a public hearing for every regulation? Because that solves this problem. If you do
Yes,
that.
yes, 100%.
I'm in favor.
I'll speak only for me. Yes, 100%.
Yeah, and I'll say again also, I'm in favor. I think it is a good policy. I know that it can be, well, I
And
know that it is time consuming,
It
but
is.
I think it's appropriate. You know, I mean, we're only required on Title V regulations, but I think that we should hold ourselves to the same standard for all of our regulations.
It also holds future boards to that regulation as well, which gives accountability, right, to the public.
I mean, historically, how many new regulations do we do
Right.
per
Great
year,
question.
per 2 years? Probably not that many, right?
One every 4 or 5 years. Right?
Well, we've done,
I mean, how many have we done?
We did the tobacco ones 2 years ago.
We had a public hearing for that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, we did.
Dumpster.
Dumpster.
We did one for
Wildlife.
resident houses that were not occupied. Didn't we do a?
We started to talk about it. There is a draft of it.
There was a draft.
But it hasn't been passed yet.
Right.
Abandoned
The
properties, wildlife, abandoned property regulation,
Yes. Yeah.
wildlife, and now haulers are
Hauler.
hauler regulations.
That's
So,
5
okay,
in
so
2 years.
one a year. So we'll kind of averaging. Okay.
Yeah, and you know, it's interesting because you talk about a public hearing, and I was thinking, well, what in the context of, let's say, the hauler regulations, like what other than the haulers, you know, where would there be public issues? But we heard one earlier at the beginning of this meeting, you know, the idea of a dumpster being emptied at 4:45 a.m.
Right.
So even, I guess, even regulations that
Which is a continual problem, by the way, just so you
That's
know.
right.
is it,
Yep.
Yeah, home goods on Main Street is a habitual offender.
Huh.
Mm.
Interesting. Okay, so we
That goes
let-
way back to my time on the board.
let me ask, so couple things. I think we have this general understanding going forward about public hearings before new regulations. And with respect to this document, I'll do the edits that Kerry suggested and send it out to people so you have it. Do we feel we need to vote on this, or is this more of a guiding document? It's not a regulation. I don't know what.
If you want to make sure that future boards have to adhere to it,
No.
then you should vote on it.
Mhm.
If you think it's a thing that you just do, that you're comfortable with changing on the fly, and I can't think of the reasons why you would, but I can't think of the reasons why you wouldn't either. Then it's more of a kind of a policy of the board rather than a vote. So it just depends on what this board wants to do from a formal standpoint.
Okay.
I mean, if we vote on it, so, right out of the gate, if we vote on it, then it must be adhered to by staff. And if it has to be adhered to by staff, then it should have some leeway into the timelines. If it's more of a policy, then it's like, well, this is what we'd like you to do. And if if you have to change that timeline for a specific reason, you can. That'd be my take.
Can I add in? I wonder, with our conversation, the suggestion Kevin made about, considering what are our pre-regulation steps, whether we think about having that aspect developed and then perhaps vote on the whole thing of these are the wraparound steps that we expect to occur, that we're going to adhere to, that we're required by law, and that where applicable, and then we just have one vote for that one document. Does that make sense?
It does. It makes a lot of sense, Kerry. I mean, we don't have to rush into it. Sure.
So if you adopt the policy, to have a public hearing for new regulations, that takes care of all the things you're talking about, because we know how to run public hearings over here.
Correct.
You know how to reach out to people, so you don't need to have a separate document for that.
Oh,
you do all
okay.
those things.
Okay. Oh, interesting. Okay. Huh.
Aday, what are your feelings on that document that Rick laid out? You fan of it? Good, bad, or indifferent? Give us your layout of it.
Honestly, I like it.
Okay.
I can't complain. I like it.
Okay.
And if you vote on it in the event that I'm not here,
give you some wiggle room,
or there's a different director, they know exactly what to do.
Yes.
That's a good point too. But as well as I feel like there should be some wiggle room added in there.
Yeah.
That it is a guideline, not a strict adherence.
So the way I see it is there are some that are like required by the state, and they're hard deadlines.
Sure.
Yes.
So those would be followed 100%.
Yep.
But the ones by the board, they will be followed. But I mean, since I'm your agent, right. Since I'm the board agent, then I can get some leeway on those.
Most of them had up to 90 days to comply.
Right.
For those additional ones, that would seem, at least to me, it's quite a lot of wiggle room.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that seems to be already built in.
Yes, I think it's reasonable.
So I always think in the terms of what can't we figure out, right? So it's like, don't handcuff me to something that in the future I haven't come up with the solution to a problem that hasn't existed yet, right? So I get the state guidelines, Joan. I would have a little asterisk on next to those ones where this is a state guideline, it must be adhered to, and then the double asterisk next to the other. This is a guideline from the Board of Health to be adhered to as best possible, or some other verbiage. I mean, we can come up with some kind of language. I
Agree.
don't want to handcuff us into something that
Agree.
we can't think of right now as a board.
Agree.
Sure.
Yeah, that's all.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, we could always amend it. If a
I'm
new
not.
situation
Usually,
came
by the
up.
time you amend it, the problem has already existed.
Right, right. But I like the idea of, I do like the idea of voting on it because this is what the board's expectation is, right? So there's not any gray area if not a day, don't go anywhere. But should there be other staff, or should a day, need to be out of office to support a family member for his own reasons, there's a tool, there's some kind of clear direction of expectations that other staff could follow.
So why don't I do this? Why don't I make some edits based on this conversation? And we can have it on next meeting's agenda for a quick review and vote.
Right.
Okay.
That
Yeah,
sounds good to me.
And just to make it maybe a little faster, Rick, if you can send that out to all of us, and then we can send our comments and edits
Oh,
to
good,
Day
good idea.
directly.
To a day, yeah.
Yeah, just so we're not, we're not meeting obviously outside of open meeting laws, and then he has all those things for the next meeting, and I think it'll roll faster.
Yeah, we'd want to. Okay, sounds good.
Yeah. Love it.
All right, monthly report.
Right, so I'll go through this really quickly and then hand it over to Liv. April was busy for us. We were able to complete 8 comprehensive food inspections. We got a lot of housing complaints as well, so we conducted 8 housing inspections as well. We had a lot of trash complaints, about 8 to 10. We issued about 11 order letters, and we issued 1 temporary food event permit. All right, Liv.
Thank you. I'm just going to go ahead and share my screen.
Thank you for hanging in there, Liz.
I am always listening, and I love hearing you guys discuss. It's really awesome.
Liar, you're such a good liar.
Oh my goodness. There we go. Sorry. All right, so we have our May nursing updates. Last month, in the month of April, we had 25 influenza cases and 10 COVID cases. Those are pretty on par with our numbers from last year. These are our May blood pressure screenings. I was at the Pleasant Street Senior Center on May 7th, and I will be at the Reading Public Library on the 18th, and I will be at Frank Tanner on the 21st. This month, we are doing Mental Health Awareness Month, and specifically talking about sleep. When sleep suffers, so does our mental health. So make sure you are getting a good night's sleep. It's also Women's Health Month this month. Just really want to increase awareness for women's health issues and encourage self-care practices. So get those yearly physicals and those yearly mammography sessions, and get in with all the doctors that you need to. It is also ramping up on tick season. I'm seeing a lot of Lyme cases coming through my Maven. And also now I just recently went to a seminar for the alpha-gal syndrome that is being placed in Maven. So please watch yourself for ticks and contact your primary care if you find one on you. We have our annual hearing screening coming up on May 20th. That is next Wednesday, so please go ahead and sign up if you need to get your ears checked. This is free for all residents, and the practitioner that comes in is wonderful, and she does a great job. I also have that same practitioner coming into the Reading Fire Department tomorrow to do hearing screenings for our fire individuals and EMS. We also have our health fair coming up on June 1st. I have plenty of vendors coming to that, and I would love to see any and all residents there. It would be wonderful. We have our Bump Baby and Beyond this upcoming Saturday, May 16th, that is being hosted by the Middlesex Essex Public Health Collaborative, and Reading is one of the towns within that collaborative, so we are co-hosting this event. And as always, I have my diabetic supplies take back program and our medical supplies take back program. I also just wanted to speak on the mammography van that we had last week. It was a great success. We had 10 participants who were able to get screened and the company reached out to me, Dana-Farber Mammo Van, and they said our residents were so kind. So I'm very, very happy.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Liv. Dr. Lopez?
Yes. Any other comments or questions? I did talk to Aday about having Liv put together what she did a few months ago in terms of an update on the community health improvement plan, in terms of our goals and the kinds of things that Liv has been working on, and others in terms of addressing those where they have been addressed. And I'm sure there are things that haven't been yet, but it's good for us to a couple times a year to just check in on that, given all the work we put into it.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
Do you remember when we did the community health needs assessment? Because we're meant to do it every 5 years, so it looks like that time is approaching.
It's not coming up in 5 years,
Was
is
that
it?
like 3
It
years
can't have
ago?
been 5 years.
No, it can't be 5 years. No
No,
way.
I think it was 3 years ago.
2 or 3, yeah. I think
Yes.
we're
Yeah, 2 or 3 at most. Yeah. So
Yeah.
Okay, so we
Yeah.
need to start preparing for the next
You're not wrong.
Yeah, and we need the
yes,
funding.
yeah.
Remember, we used the ARPA funding from COVID. I'm not
Yeah.
sure where
Correct.
we're going to get the money from, but
To do that again, yeah. Yeah.
Well, hopefully there will be some funding for local public health activities in the budget that is passed in this year and coming years. We have a great advantage that there has been funding added. There was never local funding for local public health in the budget, and we have an opportunity here. I believe that the current number under discussion is, well, I'm not even going to say, but I think
Okay.
that's a really good point, Aday, that is something that we need to figure out where we get support from it, and shared services is certainly one vehicle that, or another method through that local health funding.
Yeah, I think it's a good point around the budget, though. I'm just thinking very far ahead, maybe a year down the line or 2 years down the line. I'm a town meeting member as well, and the override is coming, and there will be hard conversations, there will be hard cuts, and so it's worthwhile just start maybe building a firewall around the must-do activities and start planning around that. Just my 2 cents.
Identifying. Yep. Agree, Addie. Yes, thank you. Yeah. Yeah. Oh gosh, we had a quorum.
We did.
We did, because Kevin and I are also town meeting members, Addie.
And good job speaking, by the way, at town
Yes.
meeting, Patty.
Yes. Well done. Yeah, no, that's another reason for looking, making sure that we're identifying all sorts of, where are there resources, and what resources, what activities are must-dos, and what has, where do we possibly get funding for them? Really good point.
Just one interesting update. I was mentioning to Aday that I kind of got drafted into this small group of a dozen people who are actively trying to promote nicotine-free generation tobacco policy across the state. And so I've spoken at several Board of Health meetings on Zoom. And just to let you know that there now currently are 24 communities that have adopted the policy across the state. And there's probably another 24 that are in the various stages of considering it. And so yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's rising to the level of when the state usually steps in.
Right, exactly. What I heard today at one of these discussions was that apparently getting to the making purchasing nicotine and tobacco products at 21 uniform across the state, there was something like 160 or 200 cities and towns that passed it before Beacon Hill, and the state, had made it a state law. And it was the same for smoking in restaurants and flavored tobacco and nicotine products. That all these policies came from many boards of health adopting policies. That policy until finally Beacon Hill, really realizes that they could pass it, and so it's a grounds up approach, kind of a log, but
yeah. No, that's right. It's acknowledging local control and, looking at local interests. And I was just beginning my public health career when smoking in workplaces was being debated across the Commonwealth. It was fascinating. But that's great, Rick, that you are sharing the experience that we have here in Reading. Two things. I understand that there is legislation out there actually working to, in some way, curtail the ability to for boards of health to enact that kind of regulation. And we're interested in watching how that progresses. Not in favor of curtailment of Board of Health authority. But I don't know if you know anything more about that. And then I think linked it was nice to, Rick and I spent the day together sort of in Danvers a couple weeks ago for the Mass Association of Health Boards annual meeting, and learned some good stuff. The nicotine, the tobacco and nicotine free came up, but I don't. It was sort of a general conversation of what is current and the like. But
just on there are two bills floating around on Beacon Hill that are somewhat deceptive in the way they are worded, which say across the Commonwealth for alcohol, cannabis, gambling, and nicotine and tobacco, no one can participate in these unless they're 21 years of age. And if there are any other sort of local regulations that are different from this, then they are null and void. And so that would make the nicotine-free generation. So today, this group and me, as I was there, we spent about 5 hours at the State House going to a variety of different senators, Jason Lewis, Mariano, several others, the governor's policy committee, explaining why these two apparently innocuous amendments would be problematic, and so trying to get people to be aware of that.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that, because my understanding is at least one of them has made it out of
the third hearing,
the place where out of the third reading, and that's it has made some progress. So hoping that it
I don't want to create an issue here with not having someone on our agenda, but I'm shocked to hear something's coming out of this legislature in that manner. Really,
what do you mean?
I would never envision our state legislature to go against that policy, or excuse me, that policy, that regulation that towns have enacted.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, that is
Other way
actually,
the opposite
Yep.
would make
Right.
more sense than this. So that's
yes,
stunning to
that-
hear. I hadn't heard it.
that's actually one of the major points because it really preempts the role of the Board of Health, which
The
for 200
unswerable
years,
authority.
the boards of health have had, say over health issues in
Autonomy.
the communities.
We are
Um,
outside of their rules.
Yes.
Yep.
And so that's why I'm like,
Agreed.
it's stunning to me. I just it's the first I've heard of it, so I'll have to look into
Agreed.
it.
Yeah, no, it
I-
is, it's catching a lot of, it's interesting to a number of folks that this has somehow gotten some legs, and it seems,
And like, so I'm saying this in a degree which I don't want to really talk about the elephant in the room. But the legislature is set up in a certain way that can basically put anything through that they really want to
that's right.
Yeah.
That's
in
right.
this state. And that's why I'm very surprised that this has legs at all.
Mhm.
Yes,
Mhm.
I also would like to mention that there is a push to ban kratom drinks. I don't know if you've heard about that,
I'm
but
sorry, say that again,
there's a
Dave?
push to ban kratom drinks.
I'm missing.
Kratom, it's kratom,
like-
go.
It's like a leaf, and they use it to make drinks. And you have the young people, they overdose on those drinks.
Okay,
There's-
so we're obviously talking about something that's not FDA regulated.
There's two different kinds of kratom. We learned about this, right, Rick? There's
Yeah.
two different kinds of kratom.
We
There
gotta be
is a
careful about where
natural
we're going into
kratom.
this conversation.
Yeah, no, well, no, I think it's, I mean, this kind of, there's two different kinds of kratom. There is the natural kratom, which has been used for centuries, for pain relief and anecdotally for support of opioid withdrawal. And there is a synthetic version, not dissimilar to the synthetic marijuana items that has had negative impact. There's a national association, the American Kratom Association, who are actively advocating for banning of the synthetic kratom and regulation of the natural kratom. It's a confusing area because people don't know the difference between them. It's very difficult to get your information of is this synthetic or is it not. It's sold in it's sold in convenience stores. Somebody referred to it as a convenience store
Over the
thing.
counter, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's the interesting thing is that you see this pattern over and over. Kratom itself is relatively innocuous, but industries then create synthetic kratom, which is 50 times more potent and actually can cause overdoses.
Yeah.
It's like tobacco and nicotine.
Yeah.
Nicotine pouches and vapes have many times the amount of nicotine per serving than a simple cigarette.
Right.
It's the same with cannabis. Synthetic cannabis, much more potent than natural cannabis. So it's we see this over and over and over again.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I'll have to look into it.
And on that note, I'll make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Kevin. Roll call. Carrie,
Yes.
Kevin,
Yes.
Joan,
Yes.
and Rick. Yes. All right. Very good
All right.
meeting.
Thanks,
Very
everybody.
good
Sorry for the long
discussion.
meeting here tonight.
See you next month.
See y'all next month. Thank you. Thanks,
Thank
Ade.
you.
Thanks, Haley. Thanks, Liv. Great to
Bye-bye.
see everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.